A minor decline in regional trade growth could necessitate a mid-year fiscal adjustment for us. This is a major risk. Fiscal risks also arise from contingent liabilities associated with state-owned enterprises and public-private partnerships. Many state-owned enterprises continue to operate with significant levels of non-guaranteed debt, estimated at 1.4% of GDP. In addition, some legacy PPP contracts contain termination clauses representing potential exposure of up to 3.8% of GDP. A comprehensive audit of these agreements is underway to avoid risks that could reach the proposed 60% of GDP, debt to GDP ceiling under the fiscal rules framework. The very same trade barriers and protectionist policies in any form undermine investor confidence and long-term planning in vulnerable trade-dependent economies. And for us specifically, the impact exerts more pressure in the textile and apparel industry, historically our largest private sector employer and a cornerstone of our export base and foreign exchange earnings. What was once our comparative advantage, anchored by preferential access to one of the largest markets, has now become a structural vulnerability. International buyers are actively de-risking their supply chains, diverting orders away from smaller economies like ours. The result, again, is closures, layoffs, and large-scale unemployment, and increased pressure on household income. This erosion of our industrial base poses long-term risks not only to employment but also to skills retention, foreign exchange earnings, and other fundamental factors. Again, the conclusion is that the city can no longer rely on episodic growth. We can no longer rely on preferential access or external financing to sustain jobs and public services. Resilience must now be built deliberately through stronger growth, domestic revenue mobilization, public financial management, or good public financial management, and institutions building capable of executing policy with speed and precision. Fiscal policy then and now remains the ultimate central instrument and anchor for restoring confidence, social protection, and enabling private sector-led growth. This state of affairs has led to one other risk, which is the external financing environment that has tightened significantly. Global development assistance is being reprioritized as advanced economies face rising debt burdens, geopolitical tensions and associated threats, geographical or demographic shifts and pressures, and higher domestic spending needs. For us, this has translated into reduced access to concessional development assistance. As traditional sources of grant support recede and global development finance becomes more selective, our resilience increasingly depends on how effectively we can anchor growth within our immediate region. The regional economy is no longer a secondary consideration and option. It is now the primary buffer through which Lesotho can and must absorb external shocks, sustain trade, secure revenue, and protect livelihoods. It is against this backdrop, therefore, that regional developments, particularly within Southern African region, assume new or renewed strategic importance to us. The situation forces us to forge new strategic alliances as we strengthen existing partnerships. The bloated public sector wage bill, estimated at approximately 17% of GDP, remains amongst the highest in the region and globally, and is fiscally unsustainable. It crowds out spending on the most essential growth-producing infrastructure such as roads and bridges, health infrastructure, schools, and productive infrastructure. This must be contained as a matter of urgency. Government cannot be the employer of choice or first choice. Neither can it be the employer of last resort. We must do everything to see that the private sector takes its rightful place and plays its role effectively in this country. And to the private sector, government cannot be your only client. Once again, I urge you to be risk from government. You have to move into productive economic activities and sectors. There's no way around it. It has to happen. Finally, the withdrawal of international health finance has created an estimated annual funding gap of 1.5 billion that we have to respond to. But I'm glad to also report that we are appreciative to the government and people of the United States of America for resuming or resumption of part of funding towards the control of HIV and AIDS and communicable diseases, including tuberculosis, through the U.S. Department of State. And through this, an amount of $218 million will be disbursed over a period of 5 years, starting from April of 2026. This is an equivalent of 3.5 billion money. So the budget further introduces measures to internalize these costs through reprioritization, capitalizing on efficiency gains and sustainable financial mechanisms without compromising fiscal stability. In navigating a more uncertain global environment, government has identified 3 strategic opportunities to strengthen resilience and unlock sustainable growth. First, we will accelerate product and market diversification to reduce concentration risks and expand export and domestic value chains. Secondly, we will forge new partnerships while deepening existing ones to mobilize investment, technology, and access to markets. And thirdly, we will pursue the strategic optimization of all our natural resources, ensuring that they are managed prudently, leveraged for value addition, and translated into lasting economic and social returns for the nation. Honorable President, Honorable Speaker, Mushompe, this macroeconomic context leads to a clear, again, and unavoidable conclusion that we need a deliberate shift in policy, especially with priorities towards strengthening our domestic revenue, enforcing discipline and efficient expenditure, and restoring credibility in policy execution. Once again, economic resilience is very important. So it is no longer an option for us to build economic resilience. It is now central for us to build it. This fiscal stance allows government to fund national priorities while maintaining stability, despite the risks that I have just mentioned. As we do so, we must be aware and ready to mitigate implementation risks linked to ambitious capital programs that end up not being implemented. We must also be able to budget only for projects that are execution ready. And additionally, the projected increases in interest payments to both residents and non-residents demand careful monitoring.